Hi, this is Ali Arango of Little Guy CGI, and today I would like to show you how to make a human female head in the Blender 2.80 beta. So let's get started. Okay, if this is your first time in Blender, I recommend... Oh yeah, that's right. Don't have to do that anymore. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to left click on this cube. We're then going to press X, and then we're going to press delete. What we're going to do now is we're going to hold shift, and while holding shift, we're going to press A. This brings up our add to menu, and then we're going to go to UV sphere. Okay, with this UV sphere, what we're going to do is we are going to go to a front view. I'm still getting used to Blender 2.8 myself. If you're curious to see which view you're in, you can see right here, we're in front orthographic view. Okay, now that we're in front orthographic view with this UV sphere, what we want to do is go to our right to what looks like this wrench. We're going to left click on that wrench. We're going to click on this add modifier button. And then we're going to go to the subdivision surface modifier. And we're going to left click here. And we're going to take this view up to 2. Everything else can stay the same. We're also going to check mark this button here. It looks like kind of like a triangle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to left click on apply to apply that modifier onto that UV sphere. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our right orthographic view. And I did that by just clicking here. So in Blender 2.8, there's a lot of things, a lot of very cool things that are different. Some of the things you should know as far as manipulating your view is if you hover your mouse right over here, you can left click and drag. And this will basically do what you used to do in Blender with holding the middle mouse button. You can rotate your view. You can still hold your middle mouse button. If you want to pan, you hover your mouse over this hand and just left click and drag, and you'll pan your view around. If you want to zoom, you can just hover your mouse over this, looks like a plus there, and pull back or push in and get a nice smooth zoom. Very nice. So I'm going to click on this X here. And when I clicked on that red X, that put us in the right orthographic view. Now I'm going to hover over this hand here and just pan the view to the side. A lot of cool stuff in Blender 2.8, and hopefully going through this, you'll see and learn good stuff, very good stuff. So with our UV sphere here and with our subdivision surface modifier applied to this, what we want to do is hold shift, press D. Then we're going to right click. What we want to do now is we want to push this forward. So you see right now we don't see our manipulator. To get our manipulator, what we can do is left click here. And now we see the manipulator right there. So remember, if you want to see which view you're in, look to your upper left. You can see we're in the right orthographic view, which is where you want to be. So we're going to push this forward. And this is spectacular. I'll try to point out, this is my first video in Blender 2.8. I'll try to point out some of the things that I really like without saying everything, because I really like most of what's in here, just about everything. So what we're doing is we push this UV sphere forward. You can see in Blender 2.8, see this line right here? It's just very easy to see how how different shapes interact. So we have this line right here. We also can see like the whole shape right here. Very nice. What you want to do with this second sphere is you're going to push this down. What you're doing is you're lining up the top of this sphere with these horizontal lines right here. As far as the back of the sphere, you're lining that up with these vertical lines right here. You're going to press S to scale this down some, not too much. And then after scaling it down, you're going to push this back up. So you're just pushing this top so it's right along this line, and you want this back part of this sphere right along with this line here. Okay, what's going on here is we're in the right view, so we're looking basically at the head from the side. I've been watching, in between the time in between tutorials, I've changed most of my character making workflow to a sculpting workflow. If you're used to this channel, most of the time I would box model things. Now I sculpt more. And that's pretty much what we're doing here. We're going to sculpt this face. I've learned a lot from a sculptor named Shane Olson. Really like his style. He has stylistic characters that he makes. Another guy, Steve James. And what's going on here is we are looking at the side of the head. We're basically going to pull this sphere in. And as we pull this in, it's going to look a little strange, but you'll see it kind of looks like the side of a face. And what this sphere here does is it gives a nice roundness to the front of the face, to the front bottom of the face from a front perspective. So that's pretty much what's going on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to left click here, and in Blender 2.8, when you look at the top here, we have all of these different layouts, that we can work with. So we're in the layout workflow now. We can go to sculpting and sculpting. I'm about to click on this. When I click on this, the view is going to change. However, what's going to happen is Blender is going to set the lighting so that, or the lighting's already set so that the colors make things easier to work in as far as sculpting. So I'm just going to left click on this now. You can see the perspective change. We can just go right to this X again, left click there. We're right back in right orthographic view. Just makes it a little bit easier for us to work. And what we want to do in here is we want to look for the grab brush. You can see this brush that has a point on this is the grab brush. We're going to left click to select that brush. Okay, what we want to do now is we're going to left click on this grab sculpting brush. We're going to press F. You want to make your brush, I pressed F, then I'm dragging my mouse. I'm going to left click to lock that in. You want to have your brush be bigger than this sphere here so that when you pull back, things will work out right. So we're trying to get this right here to about here. So we want to have this front line up with right here. So I'm going to left click and drag. That worked out well. So this is the shape that you want right here. Okay, so now with that shape there, so when I click the green or the Y, that took us to a front view. In sculpt mode, which is what we're in. So we're in sculpt mode, and I want to make sure I don't confuse you. These are the modes right here, right? Now, when we press this layout here, this took us into the sculpting layout, and then this brought us into sculpt mode. Now, the regular layout is right here, and in Blender 2.8, when you switch to the layouts, the layout remembers which view it was in. I want you to understand that in this layout that we started in, we can click here and go to sculpt mode here. You can do that. So when you click sculpting up here, this takes us to Blender 2.8's sculpting layout, and it puts us in sculpting mode, but we can also go back through our modes, right here. So I'm still trying to find out the best way that I like to work in here. Anyway, we're in a front orthographic view right now. What we want to do is hold shift, and I'm left clicking to smooth this out. So I'm holding in the middle mouse button to rotate the view. See how this is like kind of concave? I don't want that. I'm going to click on this green circle here. That puts us back to front view. Okay, and what I'm trying to get here is the reason why we did the sphere setup in the first place is this right here. All right, so with that done, and we still have to work on this. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the we clicked on the X button right here. This took us back into right orthographic. Now I'm not sure the best way to switch from object to object yet in Blender 2.8. You guys have helped me out a lot in the past, giving me tips and telling me how you do things, and a lot of things have improved from that. So right now what I've been doing is I'll just go back to layout, and then I'll click on what I want. You can see when I clicked on layout, it took me back into object mode. So I clicked on this top sphere, and then I just click back into sculpting mode. So that's how I've been doing things. Okay, so what we want to do now is we're going to press F to make our brush smaller. So I pressed F, and I'm pushing my brush in some. Now we're going to our flatten brush. And what we want to do is flatten out the side right here. And now I'm going to click, okay, Y. Wait a second. There we go. Wanted to be in front orthographic. So see how we flatten this out right here? And what we did is we flattened the sides out. So that's what we want for that. And now this edge right here. And this is, by the way, the colors in Blender 2.8, like how when we go into sculpting mode, just the way things are set up, it does make it a lot easier to sculpt. I'm going to press Z and turn on smooth shading. And I did activate the pie menus in user preferences, which now are in edit mode. So I just went in there and I turned on the pie menu. Should be near the bottom of the list for add-ons. Okay, so with this flattened out here on the side, we want to stay on our flatten brush. And now what we want to do is go right to this edge right here. And we're going to flatten that out some. And this is the top part of the head right here is basically what this is going to be. So this is going to be the bottom part of the head, the top part of the head there. Okay, with our flattened brush still selected, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, rotate slightly, hold Control, and push in to zoom in. So I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Remember, you can also pan right here. These controls are really good if you're working with a tablet. I'm working with a mouse and a keyboard. Really, really like that right there. I'm going to press F to make my brush, my flattened brush, a little smaller. And I'm not doing it yet. I'm going to flatten this edge out right here. So now I'm actually holding my mouse button down. And if you're totally new to Blender, the reason why when I work on this side, that things are going on in that side is in sculpt mode. Sculpt mode has a symmetry mode where what you do to one side is done to the other side, which is very useful. Okay, what we want to do now is we want to go to our front view. So just by clicking on this green Y button, I clicked on this a couple times, it brought us back to front view. I'm going to press F to make my brush bigger. And again, if you're totally new to Blender, I am selected on, there's two objects here. There's two spheres, right, that we're working on. This sphere is currently selected on, even though you can't see it selected. That's why when I work with this, nothing will happen to this sphere. When this sphere is selected, and then I work with this sphere, this will work. It will show the work without this, and that's what's going on if you're curious about that. So what we want to do now is flatten out this area right here. And I'm holding the middle mouse button, rotate, so you can just see that area is kind of like flattened out there. Now what we want to do is we're going to go to layout modes. I'm just going to left click on layout mode. And with this selected, I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis like this. And what I found is this helps to set me up for the angles of the face right here. Looks strange now, but it works pretty well. Like you'll see as things go along. So I'm going to click the Y again, and I'm learning even as I'm doing this. And what we want to do is I'm rolling the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to hold Shift and then press A. This brings up our Add To menu. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a cube. So here's our cube here. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back more. I'm going to take the manipulator and just move this up. And what we want to do is we're going to put a subdivision surface on this. We're going to use this cube for multiple things. We're going to use this cube for a neck right now. And then we're going to use this cube. We're going to duplicate it. We're going to use that for a neck in a few moments. So with this selected, we can go to our modifier panel here, and we can click subdivision surface, right, to put a subdivision surface on. That's what we want. Or we can hold down Control, and then while holding Control, press 2. And then that puts a subdivision surface of 2 onto this cube. So that's what happened. So with that done, and with the modifier still applied here, what you want to do is press S to scale on the Z axis. that. I'm gonna roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to move this cube up a little. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our upper left here where we see object mode. I'm going to left click here, go to edit mode. And we're going to hold control. While holding control, press R. That put a loop cut in. I'm going to left click one time because I only left click one time. I can move this loop cut. So I'm going to move this up, kind of like flattening out the top there. And I can actually left click now in Blender 2.8 on nothingness to deselect there. Before we would press A to select everything, and then if we add something, select it. And when I say before, I'm talking about the other older version of Blender, and then A to deselect. Now we can actually left click and drag to select, and then left click on nothing to not to deselect. And I'm laughing to myself because one, I'm happy this happened, and two, it seems like it always should have been like that, but that's another story. Anyway, we want to put another loop cut in here. We're going to hold control, press R. We're going to left click once because we only left click once, we can move this loop cut. We're going to move this down. Then we're going to left click a second time. Then we're going to click on nothingness. Okay. So now that we have this loop cut in here and we have like this kind of not totally square, but more squarish shape, we're going to go to our upper left, go to object mode, and then we're going to click apply. So we applied that modifier. We're now going to press Z and go to smooth shade. And check this out. If you don't have your pie menu set up, you can right click and select smooth shading from here. So just a lot of good stuff in Blender 2.8. Okay, so we have this shape here. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis to shrink that down. And what we're going to do now is we're going to hold shift while holding shift, press D, and then right click. So when I press shift D, I duplicated that shape. I right click to keep the shape in place. I'm going to take this manipulator, push this straight down. I'm holding them on a mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to press S to scale this down. I'm going to click this green Y. Oops, now I'm going to click the red X to go to right orthographic view. And now I'm going to press S to scale this down more. What we want to do is get this to the point where we can rotate it where it kind of looks like it's this being it is aimed towards this line right here, right? So I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis like that. We want this to be a little bit longer, right? So if I press S to scale on the Z axis, this is going to deform this shape, right? If we scale now, so don't scale. See that line going up and down showing us how we're going to scale? But if you press Z again, now this will scale how we want it to. So I'm just going to left click and drag and then left click to lock that in. If you're new to this channel and not used to these videos, yes, I try to explain everything. Sometimes people really like that. They're like, hey, he tries to explain everything. He tries to say every key click. That's great. And other people, why is he trying to say everything? You don't have to say that. So that's kind of how things go in this channel. When I first started off this channel, I started making YouTube tutorials. I would watch video tutorials and they would skip a step here, skip a step there. They being tutorial makers, there's spectacular tutorial makers out there, but even with that, a lot of times people would skip steps, and I was like, if I made tutorials, I would say every single little thing. So I used to get so frustrated. I was like, I want to make tutorials and say everything. And yeah, so that's what I try to do. Anyway, we've got our neck here, right? The people that I mentioned to you, Shane Olson and James Andrew, they work in ZBrush. So one of the ways that I found that you could make Blender work more like what they were doing with ZBrush is this next thing I'm going to show you. So I'm going to press this green Y, click it once, it takes us to the back orthographic. Click it again, takes us into user perspective. I click it again, takes us into front orthographic, which is what I want. I'm rolling the mouse wheel to zoom in. See how our 3D cursor is right here in the center. That's where you want it to be. What we're going to do now is we're going to hold shift, press A, and then we are going to go to empty, and I'm going to go to cube and then left click to bring in a cube empty. Okay, an empty is a non-renderable object, very useful for multiple things. We're going to use it here to work with our mirror modifier. So what we're going to do, now that we have the empty here directly in the center of your scene is where you want it. It used to be in Blender that if you wanted to move this 3D cursor, you would right click. Now when we right click, we have this pop up, which I like a lot more than having a 3D cursor jump. However, we can still move this 3D cursor. Why would we want to move this 3D cursor? The reason why we want to move the 3D cursor is because in Blender, where this 3D cursor is at is where objects tend to come into Blender at. So in Blender 2.8, the way that we move the 3D cursor is we hold Shift and then we right click. And now you can see the 3D cursor jump to right where I, clicked at. So I held Shift, I right clicked, the 3D cursor moved to there. Now what we're going to do is hold Shift, press A. We're going to go to Mesh, and we want to bring in a cube. You can see the cube came right to where our 3D cursor is at, right? Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to our upper left. We're going to left click and go to Edit Mode. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. And now what I'm going to do is, I was going to say press W. Before I would press, in my other tutorials, you would press W. Watch right here. When I press W now, see this? When you press W now, you select between the different modes right here, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to right click. And then when we right click, we're going to left click to subdivide. All right. So before, typically, if I was taking a cube and I wanted to get a round shape of the cube, I would press W, then I would choose subdivide smooth. Now what we do is we subdivide this. See how this menu popped up after subdivide? We go here, and now we see the number of cuts here. We want the number of cuts to be 1. The smoothness, we want to take this all the way up. And now basically we have our subdivide smooth, like what I used to do in the previous tutorials. So I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis because I want to flatten this out. We're doing this because we're basically making an ear here. I'm going to press S to scale and then Y to flatten that out more. Now I'm going to left click on nothingness. I'm going to go to the upper left click, then go to object mode. I'm now going to press S to scale. I'm now going to hold Control and then press 2. And what that did was that put a subdivision surface modifier on this shape. And that's why it's smoother now. Now I'm going to right click and then left click on smooth shade. Okay, so what is this empty here for? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to use this empty to control a mirror modifier. So with this selected, this is basically our ear here. We're going to click on the wrench if you're not clicked on it. This brings up our modifier menu. We're then going to go to add modifier. I was looking at that arrow. It's right here. Add modifier. You're going to left click. And then you're going to go to mirror modifier. So here's mirror modifier. You're going to left click, right? And what you want to do is go down to where you see this mirror object. So you're going to click here. And now you see empty. So you're going to left click on empty. And the reason why we did this is because now when we want to push these shapes in, when I left click, see how they move away and then in? And this is how things tend to work, as far as I know, in ZBrush and the tutorials that I was watching in ZBrush that helped me learn how to do this method. That's pretty much how ZBrush works. So I found out by putting this empty here, doing a mirror modifier like this made things kind of pretty much work like how I saw people using ZBrush to work. Now with that done, we're going to press S to scale. Push these in. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. We're going to press R to rotate on the Z axis. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. So see how the ears are like going back. So I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis to make them go back a little more. Then I'm going to push in like that. I really like in Blender 2.8 how you can see just see the shape. I mean, it's just so good. So I just pressed S to scale the ears down some. And there we go so far. There we go so far. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to left click on this. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. We're going to go to Sculpting. So when I clicked Sculpting, I clicked the Sculpting layout. Remember, the view isn't saved. When I click that Sculpting layout, that's brought us into sculpt mode with the color and with the save view. what we want to do here is we're going to click on the grab brush. Okay, with this grab brush, and remember, we're selected on this. Because we're selected on this, we'll be able to work with this sculpt. See this right here? We want to grab this area around here and pull this back towards the ear. All right, that's pretty much what we're doing here. So I'm going to press F to make this a little bigger. And I'm just pulling this back like that. Good. Okay, what we're about to do is this right here is going to be where the eyes are at. So we're going to go to our flatten brush. When I saw people doing this method at first, I was like, what in the world? I had seen the finished result and the characters look very good. When I saw them doing the method, this was Shane Olsen and James Andrew, I was like, well, that's so strange. But then after a while, it started to make sense to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flatten this out. Now remember, I'm not touching this because I'm selected on this. These are two separate objects. So I'm just flattening this out here. And this right here, you see, we don't want that. That's the neck actually showing through. So I'm going to click, I'm about to click on layout. This is going to change the color, bring us back into object mode, just because that's kind of how the layouts work. So here we are. I came here because see how this part's coming out. So what I'm going to do is press G, Z, and then Z again. And that just lets me move this down. So when I press Z again, it let me move this on the axis that like this is facing. All right. Okay, so now that I have that done, I'm going to go back to sculpting mode. The angle's different because sculpting mode remembers the angle different. I have to go back here. I've got to reselect here. That's how I know how to do things right now. Now I'll go back to sculpting mode. Okay, so I'm flattening out this area here. I'm going to go to the grab brush, press F, pull this in, pull this down, something like that. I'm going to hold shift. When you hold shift, you automatically activate smooth mode. All right. So you don't see me click anything. You're like, what the heck? He's still on grab. I'm holding shift, and in Blender sculpt mode, when you hold shift, you automatically act a smooth mode. So I'm holding my fingers down on shift and I'm moving the mouse. So I'm smoothing this out. That's what's going on. That's the kind of stuff, you know, that makes me feel happy saying, because before, you know, people would start doing stuff and they wouldn't say it. Like, again, I've seen more people be much better recently. When I first started Blender, that used to be typical. Anyway, I want to shrink this, right? Shorten this. So I'm going to go back to layout mode. And then I'm going to press S to scale in the Z axis here. Now we want to take this angle here. Like we want to use a flatten brush to kind of like push this angle in. So I'm going to go to scope mode, hold them on the mouse button, go back to the flatten brush. And yeah, we're going to, didn't do anything yet, but we're going to work to get an angle in right here. So I'm going to press F, push my brush in, and I am right on that edge there. I'm holding shift now to smooth out this here. And this is basically blocking out the character. And it's kind of like before you start sculpting, you're like, oh, he said sculpting, but he's going back and forth. I'm holding shift, by the way, to smooth this out here. You kind of basically get your basic details in. I'm going back to the flatten brush. Oh, grab brush. I messed up. Yeah, you kind of get your basic details in before you start your serious sculpting. Oh, look at that. Right click here. Okay. Want that smooth. So I press Z and then I selected shade smooth for that right there. Okay, so we have our basic face shape. Let's bring in nose in. So how we're going to do that, we're going to left click on layout. We're going to left click here. We're going to hold shift, press D, and then right click. So when I press shift D, I duplicated this. I right click to keep this in place. Now I push this straight down. I'm going to press S to scale. See, this is great in Blender 2.8. How you can still see this shape even though it's inside the head. It's great. Okay, I'm going to press S to scale down more. And what we're doing with this is going to be our nose. I press S to scale on the X axis like this. I'm going to click this red X here. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis like this. Pulling that back into the face. Just taking a look at what we have here. And press R to rotate on the X axis just to rotate that some more. Press this X here so you can see we're in right orthographic there. I'm going to click on sculpting. Well, let me go back to layout. I'm going to click here. Now I'm going to go back to the sculpting layout. Hopefully that doesn't bother you too bad, jumping around like that. Press F, grab and pull this back. Push this forward some. Now remember, I'm only grabbing this bottom part, and that's why the nose isn't being affected from me doing that. Press F, shrink that. I'm going to click to go back to layout. Press S. Okay. Okay, I'm going to click the green circle here. And basically what's going on, this is going to be our eye line right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold shift and then right click to put the 3D cursor right there. Now what we're going to do is hold shift, press A while holding shift. We're going to bring in a UV sphere. We're going to press S to shrink that UV sphere down. Then left click. And you see how, like, because this shape goes into this shape, it kind of gives us the shape we need. Not totally, but for the eye. I'm going to click here, go back to sculpting mode, the grab brush, adjust that something like that. And I'm going to click to go back to layout mode. Click on the eye, rolling the mouse wheel to zoom back, holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Now I'm going to go to that modifier. I'm going to click add modifier, mirror modifier. Going to where we see mirror object, I'm going to click right on this square here, and I'm going to then select empty. And remember, the empty allows us to be able to push and pull the eyes. Like, we can push and pull the eyes very easily. Pull this into the head. More. And you see that? See how you can kind of see, like, this split between here and here starts to give us like the eye shape. I thought that was cool when I was learning this method. Okay, in previous versions of Blender, we had layers. Now we have something called collections. So when I click here, you can see these are the different shapes and things that we have. So in this collection here. So I want to take this empty and move this to another collection. Now previously I would have moved this to another layer. Now I'm going to move it to a collection. So I'm going to press M just like before. I'm going to select new collection. And this is collection 2. That's fine for me. I click OK. Now before, if we had moved it to another layer, this would have disappeared automatically. Now what we can do is we can click on this eye to have it disappear, or we can click this right here, this button, which is disable collection in the viewport. So with that, we have another place to put objects. So with the eye, we want to make shape the head more for the eye. So we're going to left click here. We're then going to go back to scope mode. Next, we go back to layout. I'm going to click here. I'm going to right click. And then I'm going to select smooth shading for the eyes. In sculpting mode, when you right click, you don't get the context menu, just so you know. I'm going to click back here, go back to sculpting. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look for I like the blob brush. Here we go. And what I want to do is shape this more so that the eye fits better, particularly this part of the eye right here. Okay, so with the blob brush, I'm going to... So normally the blob brush makes you come out. I'm going to hold control. Okay, that is working. And I'm just using the blob brush to make a depression. For the eye there. Now I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm just looking at what I just did. Okay, so we're going to go back to layout. I just clicked on layout. I'm going to click on the eye. I'm going to hold shift, press D. And then I'm going to right click to get that to stay in place. I'm now going to press M. So I duplicated the eye. I'm selected on the duplicate of the eye. I pressed M, and now I'm going to select collection 2. So that duplicate doesn't look like I did anything here, but I just moved the duplicate to collection 2, which is currently hidden. And the reason why I did that is we're going to make eyelids. We put the eyeball to fit inside of the eyelids, basically. So we have this depression here. Now we see this. I want to get rid of that, or not get rid of it, but shape it to bring that down. So I'm clicking on the mouth area. I'm going back to sculpting. I'm going to go to my flatten brush. Okay, it's not giving me what I want. So I'm going to go to the grab brush. Pull down there. I'll just have to smooth that out. Okay, we're going to left click to go back to layout. We're going to click on the eye, where it's going to be our eyelid. Hold the middle mouse button just to take a look. Okay, so with the eye selected, we're going to go to View over in the upper left-hand corner. Then we're going to select Local View. So in Local View, this lets us focus just on the eye. Now, Local View in previous versions of Blender used to the 3D cursor where it automatically go right to the center of our object. It's not doing that here. So I'm going to select Y, then Y again. And now with this selected, I'm going to hold shift, press S, and that brought up this pie menu. And what I want to select is cursor to selected. I wanted that right in the center there. With that done, we're in local mode. We're still in object mode. I'm going to left click here, go to edit mode, right? I'm going to left click on nothingness. This is the mirror version. That's why it looks like that compared to this. If you're wondering, I'm going to go to here. And this is our, oh, I'm thinking the wrong thing. This is our wireframe view right here. Our vertex select, edge select, and face select is right here. We're going to go to face select. And before we would have pressed B select. Now we're just going to left click and drag over the top half of this UV sphere. Then we want to press Y. And when we pressed Y with this selected, okay, first of all, we selected this. We selected this in this wireframe mode because if we didn't go to wireframe mode, there's other ways to do it, but if we just selected, we would have just selected the front part of this eye and not, I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate the back part. So by going to wireframe mode, I'm clicking this green Y to get back to front. We were able to select this entire top here. So I pressed, with that selected, I pressed Y, and what Y does is it separates what we have selected. So I'm going to press G just to make sure. So this is how I want it. I'm going to right click to get that to jump right back. Then I'm going to select this red X. See, we're in right orthographic. And what I want here is to go to, this is our, when we click here, this is our pivot point options. We want to select 3D cursor. So the 3D cursor is here. So because we went to that pivot point and we have our 3D cursor here, when we rotate, we're going to rotate right on this 3D cursor, and that's what we want. So we're going to press R to rotate on the X-axis. We could have just rotated. But the X-axis, the reason why we can just rotate is because we're in an orthographic view. So we rotate this up because this is our eyelid. So we're going to left click on nothingness. We're going to hover here, press L, and we're just going to press R to rotate and rotate this down like this. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to left click on nothingness. And we're going to click Y. Go back to front view. We'll click our solid to go back to solid view. And then we'll go to view and select local view again to see our eyelids here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to go to object mode. We're going to click on our wrench, which is our modifier panel. We're going to go to where we see add modifier, this little triangle looking thing right here. And we're going to go to solidify. Because our eyelids are totally thin, we don't want that. So here's solidify right here. We're going to left click. And here's our solidify options right here. So basically what you're seeing here is our mirror modifier here, right? All these are mirror modifier. And then we have our solid, not our solid modifier here. And if you want to see like where the modifier is at, pay attention to this little triangle, kind of like let you know, like, okay, this is the mirror modifier. This is the information for that. Here's another triangle. Here's this solidify modifier. So we're going to left click and drag to the right. And what you can see is we have a lot of thickness there. Now I'm going to go to sculpt mode. Okay, that's entering sculpt mode is not showing anything. So let's go back to here and click this triangle here. I think, is that thick enough? I'm rolling the mouse wheel to zoom in. All right, so sculpt is not showing, which is fine. It's possibly because could be what I'm doing, or it could be just sculpt mode or beta. It's It's fine. Go back to layout mode. And what we want to do is bring back our eyes. I'm going to click here. Here's our sphere that represents our eye. Huh. I'm not sure why that's not coming back. I said I'm still new to, oh, there we go. That's why. Still new, still learning Blender 2.8 myself. So we have this eye here now. So we're going to press S to scale this down. We're just trying to see if our eyes, how our eyes look as far as the thickness of the eyelid. Okay. Okay, so you see how the eye is like pushed in here. So what we're going to do is click on this, go to scope mode. Okay, now it's showing up. And we'll go to our blob brush. When you're in the blob brush, make sure you're holding control. If you don't hold control, the blob brush is automatically going to come out. We're using it to push in. So I'm holding control down. And that's allowing me to basically push in. I'm going to press F to shrink my brush. I'm going to go back to layout, click here, come back to sculpting. And now I'm just trying to get so I can see this detail here. I'm going to go back to layout, click here, back to sculpting. Go back to layout, click here, back to sculpting. Okay. Okay, one of the things we want to do is we're going to go back to layout. Click on this empty here. And one of the very cool things is you can click right here and just get rid of that empty easily. I'm going to click on the nose. I'm going to press S to scale and right click. This is off. Everything is set to scale for the 3D cursor. So actually, let's go here. Let's change this pivot point back to Blender's default pivot point, which is the medium point. Now we can press S to scale any x-axis here. Press S to scale. S to scale like that. And click here, press S to scale any z-axis, S to scale any x-axis. I'm going to go to sculpting mode, go to the blob brush, hold control. Okay, so that's not that. So I'm going to go to layout, click on the top of the head, go to sculpting. Oh, is that my, you know what? It's the neck again, I think. I click here. Zoom back so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to press S and then Z twice. Because I press Z twice. Yep. It's interesting. So now I'm going to click here because I thought that was there. I thought this was that. Go back to sculpting mode. Go to the grab brush. Hold shift. here, sculpting. See, when I roll the mouse wheel, that's what I'm doing now. It jumps the zoom. That's why a lot of times I hold control to do a smooth zoom. I go back to the blob brush. I'm trying to see if that's the neck again. Go back to layout. Click here. Press S to scale on the Z axis. Nope. It's not the neck. Okay, we need to do some work on these eyelids. What we want to do is click on the eyes. We want to go to edit mode. And what we're going to do is hover here, press L. We hover over this geometry and press L. We select this entire piece of geometry. What we're going to do now is press P. This brings up our separate menu. We're then going to choose selection. We did that so that now this is its own separate piece of geometry. So now we can left click here, go to object mode, click just on this piece of geometry. And we're actually going to go to scope mode now. Let's go back to layout mode. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to make sure we're clicked on the eye, and we're going to go to the solidify mode, and we're going to select apply. We're going to click the bottom part and select apply. We're going to click on the top part now. Let's go to the mirror modifier and turn off the visibility. For the top as well as for the bottom. So let's click on the top piece of geometry. Now we'll go to scope mode. Now this is its own separate piece. It's separate from this piece. So because it's its own separate piece, what we want to do is lift this part up and this part down. So lift this part up and bring this part down is what our goal is. I'm going to press F to make my mouse bigger. Because we're selected on just this part, we don't have to worry about affecting any of the other geometry around the area. Okay, I'm going to press F and then make my mouse bigger. Now what we want to do here is, remember I told you about symmetry is on automatically for sculpting. What we want to do is, because basically this is its own separate object, so symmetry, if we push up, we want to push up here and bring this down here. Symmetry is on this desk, so when we push up here, this will move up. We don't want that, so we want to turn off symmetry. What's this? Yep, here we go. Excellent. So here's symmetry right here to your lower right. And see where it says mirror here? We'll just turn this X off. And now we should be able to work. Now, if we didn't turn this off, we wouldn't be able to work correctly. So with that off, we can push this up, hold the middle mouse button, pull this down. And you can definitely be touchy with this. I'm going to hold shift to smooth that out some. I'm going to go back to layout. I'm going to select the bottom part. Go to sculpting. And the symmetry is turned off for everything, by the way, when you turn it off. So now I'm just moving this up like that. Moving this down. Remember, the reason why this isn't moving, like this part, because we're only selected on that part. So we're pulling this down. We'll go back to layout, click here, back to Sculpt, bring that down some like that. I think we're going to go to still learning all the new buttons myself. Looking for inflate. We'll inflate this some. Grab brush. Okay, let's go back to layout and let's turn back on mirror. And this right here, we're basically trying to get the basic block in. It's definitely nice using new Blender, but it's slowing me down a little, getting used to it. Okay, so we have most of the basic details. Before we join all this together, I scaled that. I'm gonna press S to scale on the X-axis. S to scale on the Z-axis. I'll make the ears a little smaller. Just press S to scale the ears down. I'm pushing them in some. I'm going to press S to scale on the X-axis some. So we're about to join all this stuff together. Okay, I really like this method. This next part gets interesting. Sometimes it will give you issues. We need to join all these pieces together. We're going to use a Boolean modifier to do that. So what we're going to do is click on the... Actually, before we do that, let's add some more geometry to this neck. And it's for something later on. So we're going to click on this. We're going to hold Control, press 2. We're going to put a subdivision surface 2 on it again. This was done once already. This is our second time doing this. We're going to click Apply. Right? Now we're going to click on this main head part right here. We're going to double click here. We're going to name this main mesh. This is where we're going to put our Boolean modifier on. So we're going to go to Add Modifier, select Boolean. Where we see Operation, we're going to click here and change this to Union. We're going to need a Boolean for each shape. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So here's one Boolean modifier. So we're going to need 5 more. So it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Sometimes the bottom eyelid will give me issues. So the first object we're going to, because it actually, when you're working with the Boolean modifier, depending on what you join in what order actually does affect how well this works. So we're going to click on the bottom lid first because it tends to give me issues sometimes. We're going to click on we're clicking this eyedropper, and I'm clicking the shape. It's basically what's going on. So the eyedropper selects the shape for the Boolean to work on. So we selected that. Now we're going to select the nose, the jaw, roll the mouse wheel to zoom down. I'm going to select ears. Okay, and I guess we need one more, so I'm going to click copy again. Oh, okay, I see. Hit sphere twice. Okay, I'm just making sure everything is once now. I think it is. I'm gonna click here. Click the neck. Okay, let's see. No, I was talking about the order. Let's see if this works. I'm going to click apply, 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 apply. Now, what's good is nothing disappeared, because often when there's an issue, a shape will actually disappear. We named this main mesh so we could click on the main mesh. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel, zoom back. Let me click here, actually, press X and then delete to get rid of that. I'm going to click on the head, which is our main mesh. I'm going to hold control, and then while holding control, drag to the side. That looks good. Everything looks like it came in. And what we're going to do now is select all of these pieces here. These are the leftover pieces. So I'll press X, delete them. Press X and delete them. Now I'll click the main mesh, hold control. Control allows me to snap the movement. That's why I selected control, and that's good. I'm going to hold control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. Okay, if some of you had issues with pieces disappearing on you, when you do the Boolean modifier, there's a threshold that you can adjust to try to fix that. Also, adjusting the order that you select shapes in also can help with the Boolean modifier. Hopefully you made it through where everything's, and we still aren't sure if everything is right yet. This next step will tell us. The good thing is when we put the Booleans on, everything's in one, everything is together with the exception of the eyes, which we want separate, right? Now what we want to do is click on our mesh. We want to go to edit mode, and then we want to click on vertex select. We're going to click on nothingness to deselect, and now we want to go to select, and then select all by trait and go to non-manifolds. We'll left click here and nice. That's a sigh of relief. If we had seen when we click non-manifold vertices highlight, it just causes a lot of issues when you go to sculpt. When you select that non-manifold, you should be good as far as your sculpting. If you select and you see vertices like select, it's rough. So this is very good right here. Okay, I'm going to go back to object mode. And if you've seen some of my other tutorials and you're like, well, if it's that hard with the Boolean, I mean, why not just box model it? When I saw people sculpting before, and this is our base here, we'll work from here. Things get better as you go along. But somebody might say, well, it doesn't look that much better than box modeling. I mean, it looks very similar to your box model. Why would you do this over box modeling? And basically what I've learned is when people would sculpt instead of box modeling, right? When I box modeling, what I liked about it, it was fairly quick. There's no retopology. You're ready to go. However, once you do sculpt, there's an extreme amount of freedom that you gain. When you're box modeling, you've got to be very careful what you pull. You're very restricted. Once you sculpt, you are free. And I had heard Shane Olson said it. He was like, once you box model and you start sculpting, it's hard to go back. He's right, because you just have freedom. So you at some point you might start setting up for a block in, getting ready for your sculpt, and you see all this extra stuff. Oh, we did all this extra work just to get that. Then you have to retopologize it later for animation. Like I said, I was like, why would you do that? Why would you basically make the same thing twice when you can just box model it? And the answer is, once you see the freedom of sculpting, it's worth it. I mean, you can. So that's the answer. So everything is good so far. Now we need to blend all these pieces together. Okay, when I say blend all the pieces together, what do I mean? When you look around the eyes, you can see the geometry doesn't look right. We're going to click on our head mesh. We're going to click on our sculpting layout. I'm going to hold control. While holding control, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and pull my mouse back. There's a new brush for sculpting in Blender called the Simplify brush. I'm going to click this to get to dynamic topology, which we're going to use with this. You're going to look to your upper right. You can see this is Dino Topo right here. We also can look down to here. You can see this as well. This is pretty much the same as far as here and here. We're going to put a check mark here. This is vertex data detected. This is fine. Click OK. You're going to click on this little triangle here. See where this says detail size? We're going to change this from 12 to 5. And another thing we need to make sure is we look down to see this symmetry lock. Previously, we had turned off this symmetry lock. You want to look to this mirror and click this X to make sure your symmetry lock is turned back on. I'm going to go back up to dynamic topology. I'm going to click here and I'm going to go to smooth shading and then put a check mark there. Okay, it used to be that I would take the clay strips brush and I would go along the edges here, and I'm not clicking anything, I'm just moving my mouse to blend this in. Now we can use this simplify brush. So I'm going to press F and then push in to shrink my brush. I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to hold control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Remember, if you're using a tablet, you could also hover your mouse here and do the same. And what I'm going to do is just right along the creases here, I am smoothing this out, and there's something very cool, and I'll show you this. And okay, basically what we're doing is, if you're like, what is he doing? I am actually using dynamic topology with the simplify brush to increase the geometry right along the edges, and this very cool addition to Blender 2.8 actually can show you what I'm doing fairly easily. I clicked on the overlay, right? Here's our options for the overlay. Overlay is, allows us to adjust how we see things. I go to this geometry with the wireframe. I'm going to put a check mark there. So you see how you can see this wireframe. We only see the wireframe partially. Right now the wireframe is set for 0.500. We can take this all the way up, and now we can see all of this, all of the geometry here. The reason why this is useful is this actually helps me to show you this. So I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm holding control of the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm holding shift to the middle mouse button to pan. So we have the simplify brush on the dynamic topology set with detail size of 5. See the faces here? Now watch this. As I go along here, you can see that geometry is increased dramatically. And now after I increase it dramatically, I hold shift. When I hold shift, Blender automatically, you really can't see it visually, I don't think, but it automatically switches to the smooth brush. So now while holding shift, which I'm doing now, I smooth over this increased geometry. So that's basically what's going on. So you see how the geometry here, there's not a lot of geometry, but you see right here, there's all of this geometry. That's a combination from the dynamic topology being turned on, as well as this simplify brush. And if you want to turn this off, I'm going to go to overlay. I'm just going to set this to 0.5. I just click 0.5, clicked here, and I'm going to turn this off. I just wanted to show you that there. So see this right here. So what we want to do here is we want to get rid of things like this. However, we want to be very careful around the eyes. We don't want to, get the eyes looking strange or too strange, whatever. So so what I'm doing is I'm just going here. Now I'm holding shift. Okay. I'm letting go of shift to increase geometry, and then I'm holding shift. And this is pretty much what we're doing. Now, things like the nose, I'm going to hold control of the middle mouse button. When I roll the mouse in and out, Blender does a big jump, so that's why I'll hold control. For the nose, I'm going to go over the nose to increase the geometry along the nose, since it's a very prominent feature. Now I'm holding shift to smooth out the increased geometry. So you pretty much just keep going back and forth with that. I'm going to hold control the middle mouse button, zoom in, hold shift the middle mouse button, pan. Same thing here. Then I hold shift. So I'm holding shift currently. I'm letting go of shift. Holding shift again. Letting go of shift, holding shift. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button, pan up here. Letting go of shift, holding shift. Letting go of shift. To see how that jumped, you got to be careful around the eyes. Holding shift. Each time I hold shift, remember, Blender is automatically switching to the smooth brush, so you really can't see anything showing you that that is what's happening. Holding shift. Letting go of shift to increase the geometry. Not holding shift. Holding shift now. Increasing the geometry along the eye. Holding shift now. Holding shift again. And you can see it. My screencast should help you to see. Okay, let me not get too. Okay, so holding shift. And I'm just trying to go along. And generally smooth this out. So I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Not holding shift. Now holding shift. Holding shift the middle mouse button to pan. Not holding shift. Now holding shift. Not holding shift now. Not holding shift, holding shift. When I do things like that, say specific things like when I'm holding shift or not, hopefully somewhere somebody's like, oh, I like the fact that he's being that exact. And somebody else is like, why is he doing that? Why? I don't know. I try to think when I first start getting used to things. A lot of times doing design work, you have to learn things constantly. And often I'm in new programs. Sometimes I'll need a program, I'll use it, and don't think I'll use it again, but I've got to learn that program. So I'm constantly holding shift, constantly in a state of learning something. Often I'm watching tutorials on something and hoping that they would give a little bit more detail just so I can get through the project I have to do. So even when I'm not seeing holding shift, you can see it right there. All right, the eyes, we want to be careful. Let's add in detail. You can see as soon as I touch the eye, holding shift, it changes a lot because it was fairly low detail. And like usual in Blender, there's multiple ways of doing different things. It's just how I am choosing to do it now. And you guys recommend things to me, I learn, and I'll change things. If things seem better, I'll change them. But for now, this is the current way of doing this. Holding the middle mouse button, zoom in, holding shift and middle mouse button, pan. Oh, that's interesting. I like going right there. It increased the sharpness right on that edge. I like that. I guess from what I did before, that part right there, I made it not do that. That's fine now because there's going to be a lot of smoothing and things that we add as we go along here. Okay. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. I'm just taking a look. Okay, so we're going to go to the clay strips brush. I'm going to press F, change the size of the brush, and we're going to add. Now, clay, we're adding mesh here as well as detail. The clay strip brush works in a sense kind of like the simplify brush. So when human beings have like a muzzle part to their mouths, which basically makes your mouth come out. So I'm just adding some of that here. And what we want to do is, I did that to do like the simplify brush did, to add geometry and also to make this come out some. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the blob brush. I'm going to press F to shrink the brush down. You want to be careful when we're about to make a depression for the mouth. You want to be careful that you have enough space between the nose and where your mouth starts. So I'm going to hold Control and start making the mouth like this. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm going to shift the middle mouse button to pan the view. I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Now I'm holding Control. Let me turn back on dynamic topology. It was turned off. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just making a basically a hole for the mouth. I found that even when your plan is to have a character with a mouth that's closed, that it seems better to make a character with the mouth open. And what I'm doing here is I'm making a hole for the mouth, right? And then I'm like looking inside to go like past the hole to actually make the more of the inside of the mouth. Okay, now I'm going to go to the grab brush. I'm going to press F to make my brush bigger. I'm pulling this down some like that. Also pushing this over. And now what I want to do now is pull forward on the lips. I know that looks very strange. So just pulling the lips out like that. If it's too pointy, so to say, I'm going to hold Control and middle mouse to zoom in. Just pull to the side. So it looks very strange, which is fine. What we're going to do now is I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to point right underneath the nose and pull forward just to adjust the way the face looks. And I'm just pulling this down some. And I hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. What I'm going to do now is go to the flatten brush. Press F to shrink my brush. Hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. And I'm just flattening that lip there. I actually want it to be flat in the way that I'm doing things here. You know, like I said, Blender, there's multiple ways to do things. This is how I particularly set up my lips as we continue to work on them. Okay, we're going to go to the crease brush. Now the crease brush, when I hold Control, see how, here's the crease brush, right? I'm clicked on this button here, which is our tools button. You can see the crease button is set to subtract by default. When I hold Control, it doesn't show, and I'm holding Control right now, this switches, but this switches. So when you hold Control, you go to the opposite of what you're set for. So I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button. I just pushed in with my mouse to zoom in, holding Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Now I am going to hold Control, and I'm using the crease brush to sharpen the lip right here, this edge of the lip. I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom lip. Okay, so now I go to the grab brush, press F. Just adjusting how the nose and the mouth interact some. When I click this red X, that made us jump back. I'm going to hold Shift B to draw a zoom box so we can zoom back in. Now what I'm going to do is I want to grab this bottom jaw part. I'm going to hold Control Shift, and I am drawing a mass select. So when I held Control and Shift, and then I left clicked and dragged, and that let me select this whole bottom part of the mouth there. Okay, now that we have that, what we want to do is hold Control, press I to invert that selection. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. When you're holding Control, if you hold Control and move the middle mouse button up, and you can see on my screen I'm barely moving. You can press the number pad period key, and you'll zoom in just like you saw right there. And then you'll regain the ability to zoom in like you did before. So I'm going to, okay, we're in a grab brush. I'm going to press F to increase the size of my grab brush, and then I'm going to push this up. So this from the front. Let's press Alt M, take this off. Okay, I'm going to go to the clay strip brush. Turn dynamic topology back on. I'm just smoothing in this thing here. Let's go to inflate. Actually, let's turn dynamic topology off and try to inflate here. To mount the shut, we'll turn dynamic topology back on now. Go to the grab brush. Shrink this down. I'm pushing in, just trying to regain control of that bottom lip. Let me go to the... I'm going to hold Control Shift and draw a mask around this bottom lip so that I can try to work on this upper lip. I just want to pull this down some. I'm going to hold Alt and M to get rid of that mask. Holding Shift to smooth out this edge here. Pulling, I'm pushing and pulling a geometry, trying to bring the chin out some more there. Press F to increase the size of the brush. Smooth this out some. Okay. Okay, let's do some work on this nose. And the way we can work on a nose, it's fairly easy, is we can actually use our actual masked brush, which is right here. So I can actually hover here, hold shift, press B to draw a zoom box to zoom us in even closer. What we want to do is pay attention to the tip of the nose here. We don't want the we're doing a draw a nostril in, so we want that right here. And I like to go off of the nose onto the face, so I'm there. You don't want to go too close. Be careful about going too close to the tip. I'm going to hold control of the middle mouse button to zoom back. And what we're going to do is hold control, press I to invert. And we'll go to our inflate brush. Inflate this up. I'll hold shift to smooth that out. Then we'll hold Alt, press M. And we can take our grab brush, we can adjust it. And we'll go back to our mask brush. We'll press F to shrink our brush down. We'll hold control. You can actually make holes for the nostrils. Hold control, press I. We'll go to the blob brush, hold control. That. Hold Alt, press M. And a lot of the details we're going to use the smooth modifier on here will change pretty dramatically, which is a nice thing because the smooth brush, the smooth modifier actually will help you as far as like feeling self-conscious as you work. One of the nice things when you're working on females is that they're smooth compared to males generally. So the smooth brush will cover up a lot of things, a lot of it kind of helps out. You'll see. We can take the blob brush. There's like a little depression here. We'll make that right there. And we'll go to the clay strips brush. There should be like some flesh that kind of comes from here, kind of goes over like that. And you want to kind of bring that, feed that in, bring it out, but then smooth it out. Just hold them in the mouse button, taking a look. And let's go to our blob brush again. I like the blob brush because it works quickly. We'll go to this ear and basically make the initial depression. Grab the ear. Actually, let's hold Control Shift and select the ear. We'll hold Control I now. And now this will allow us to work on the ears without really affecting anything else. Okay. There's a thing I had saw, I don't know where I saw it, but it was pretty cool. It was talking about sculpting an ear, and it was like the ear is a question mark, a Y, and a bump. So the question mark part, to take the draw brush, is kind of like right here. This is like what they meant by like the question mark, like this kind of like comes in like that. So then there's this Y that comes, and the Y is like this, kind of like comes down like that. And the bump, it's kind of like here. But it kind of like goes in. I picked a crease brush because I'm trying to make this Y a little sharper and the edge here. So I'm holding the control button down with the crease brush. Now I'm letting go of control to try to make the Y a little more prominent. Going back to the draw brush. Now I'm going to go back to the crease brush. And I recommend, if you're, depending on how, this is like a more of a stylistic face, depending on how real you want things to get, that you pull up an image of reference. I do have a second monitor and actually have an ear on there. A lot of this, like I said before, is going to be smoothed out. I picked the flat brush. I'm flattening the ear out on the one side. Where is the pinch brush? I'm using a pinch brush to make the ear not be as thick. Now I'm holding Shift to flatten that out. I hold Alt M. Holding Shift and middle mouse button to pan the view. Okay, we want to go to the grab brush. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Make sure your brush isn't too big. I'm going to pull the lips back some. To the side some. I'm holding Shift and my mouse button to smooth. I'm going to go to the inflate brush. Back to the grab brush. Just holding them in a mouse button to take a look. Go back to the inflate brush. Oh, I didn't grab it. There we go. Go to the crease brush. Sharpen that up some. Now I'm holding smooth brush to smooth that out some. I'm going to go to the blob brush. Shrink my brush, and I want this depression like underneath chin here, kind of like around here. Let's smooth this out. I'm just trying to get this not as pointy. We're going to go to this head part here, hold shift, smooth this out. When you're dealing with the cheeks, if you look right here, and then you go take your inflate brush, you can inflate here, but if you want more volume to the cheeks, you look here, but inflate here. Smoothing that out. Okay, we can start adjusting some of the face proportions. So I'm going to click on this red X here. I'm going to hold Control. While holding Control, push my mouse up. I'm going to hover my mouse right here. I'm going to hold Control. While I'm holding Control, I'm going to hold Shift. Now I'm left clicking to drag a loop around the nose here. So by doing that, I put a mask on the nose so that the nose is protected. We want to have the face set up. The nose should be further forward than the top lip. So we're going to adjust that now. Okay, so we're going to go to the grab brush. We're going to press F to make our brush fairly big. And our goal is we want to push the lips so that they're back further than the tip here. So I'm left clicking right on the end here and I'm just pushing back. Okay, so I'm going to hold Alt M. And now you can see we have this right here. Let's go to our Simplify brush. This is from us grabbing, having the mouse, the mask. So I'm holding Control and the middle mouse button to zoom back, holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view, pressing F to shrink the mouse. I've got the Simplify brush on, and I am smoothing or adding. Oh, I don't have the dynamic topology turned on, so I'm going to click here to make sure that's on. That's why we weren't seeing an effect. So now now the Simplify brush is working. Now I'm holding Shift to smooth this. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in closer. Press F to shrink my brush down smaller. So I know right now I'm not holding Shift. Now I'm holding Shift to smooth this out, letting go of Shift. Holding Shift and zoom in closer, not holding Shift. Just made my brush a little bit bigger there. I'm holding Shift again, smoothing this out. Still holding Shift. We're about to pull this area out. That's why I'm leaving that as it is. Smooth that out as well. So I'm going to click the red X again. And what we want to do is I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm going to the grab brush now. So what we want to do is grab this area here and pull this forward some. So I'm not doing anything yet. I'm going to press F to look at the size of my brush. I think that's a good size. So I'm clicking right here now. I'm pulling forward. Make my brush slightly bigger, pull forward there. I'm also going to click here, pull forward here. I know that's kind of lumpy there. So now we need to go and work on this. So I'm pressing F to shrink the size of the brush. I'm using the simplify brush to add detail. Now I'm holding Shift to smooth this out. Letting go of Shift. I'm holding Shift right now as I smooth that out there. Making the brush bigger, holding F, holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Zooming the mouse back to take a look. I'm going to go to the clay strips brush now. Actually put down some clay. So the clay strips brush kind of does like the simplify brush. I'm going to press F. So I'm holding Shift right now. Just taking a look. Okay. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, turn to the side. I have the clay strips brush on. I'm going to press F to change the size of the brush. Laying some clay strips down. I'm holding Shift now to smooth that out. Same thing here. Not holding Shift, now holding Shift. Not holding Shift, now holding Shift again. I want this crease here to be less prominent, so let me press F. Laying down clay strips here. Holding Shift now. Letting go of Shift. Holding Control and the middle mouse button to zoom back. Pressing F to change the size of the brush. Laying clay strips down. Holding Shift now. Shift. If I forget to say it, hopefully you can see it there. Let's smooth up some of the eyelids. So I'm going to lay down some clay strips here. Be careful about getting that edge there. You want to try to dodge that. Pretty much you want that sharp edge, so it's one thing nice with the clay strips is I can actually see the clay strips being laid down. So it kind of helps me to dodge that edge. Laying down more clay strips here. Trying to dodge the edge while laying it down. Hold the middle mouse button, rotate. And press F to change the size of the brush. I'm going to press F. Move this out again, trying to dodge that sharp point up there. hold control and the middle mouse button to zoom back. Hold control and the middle mouse button to zoom back. Now, more I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view, taking a look at things. I'm going to go to the crease brush now. I'm going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom back some more. Okay, with the crease brush we can make edges. So if you look here, you can see the crease brush is set for subtract, so we're going to be, for the most part, holding control. What we want to do is have lines come up the nose and go around the eye socket like that. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button, pan, holding control. Oh, dynamic topology is turned off. Make sure it's on. So I'm holding control. Pressing F to shrink the brush. There you go. See that edge right there? When we smooth this out later, don't you'll be like, oh no, it looks, strange. When we soften this out, a lot of that will come out, and a lot of the things that you see will be smoothed out. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna line going like this. So I'm gonna hold control again. Let me press F just to see how big my brush is. Okay, I'm holding control. So we have that line there. I'm gonna hold control here. I'm gonna hold control here. Okay. Okay, what I want to do now is put a mask right here. So I'm going to hold control. While holding control, I'm going to hold shift. Now I'm left clicking to drag around this top eyelid here. I'm holding control and shift again. And again. And again. So now that we have this selected, I'm going to hold control. While holding control, press I. That let me invert the selection. So now the only thing that we can grab is this right here. We've been using the grab brush to move geometry as far as pulling it. This time we're going to use the snake hook brush. The grab brush, what's nice about it is it moves geometry without adding to it. The snake hook brush actually will move geometry while adding to it. And sometimes if you want like this, something like the eye, the snake hook brush tends to work better from what I found. So I'm going to press F. The general size that you want as far as the brush, I find is a little bigger than the eye. So I'm going to hold control and zoom in. And we want to pull the eyes down like that. Okay, I'm going to hold Alt, then press M. Now we're going to go to the Simplify brush. Oops, don't want that so big. And that angle I told you about right here, if we start to lose that, we can use the crease brush to get that back. From the move that we did here, we have this stuff here, so I'm holding shift now. Let's move that out. So I'm holding shift now here. I'm going to actually go to the clay strips brush. Holding shift to smooth this out. I'm going to zoom in close holding the middle mouse button. And I click here, press F, make the, I'm trying to push that over some more like that. Now this sharpness I was telling you about, we can go to the crease brush and we can actually get that back. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate, pressing F to shrink the brush. I'm going to hold control. I'm going right over that edge and you see how sharp that is getting. Remember, I'm holding control. Crease brush is very nice for that. Oh no. It's weird there. It was like that strangeness right there, so I was trying to fix that, and I'm actually surprised how well that straightened things up. You'll see, like, when we put the smooth modifier on, a lot of the roughness will go away. Since we have the clay strips, let's add in right here. Smooth that out. Oops. Coming along. Okay, now that we have the basic features and we can, continue to work with the proportions, let's go to layout mode. I want to make the forehead a little bit less long. Select the green. Y there, right? That looks interesting. It's because that's in orthographic mode. Actually, let's just move our mouse a little when we come out of orthographic mode. So we're going to make sure we're clicked on our mesh. We're going to go to edit mode. And okay, we can click our views here as well. I'm still learning Blender 2.8. So just go right to front view. We're back to that orthographic view, and that's fine for now. We're going to go to X-ray. The reason why we're going to X-ray is because we're about to select right here. And we don't want to select just the front. We want to select the back as well. So when you go to X-ray view, we'll select, rather than just the faces right here, we'll select the faces in the back as well. So we're going to press, I was about to say B for box select. We don't have to do that. We have Blender's 2.8, so we can just left click and drag over this top part right here. Very nice. We will press O to turn on the proportional editing tool. You can see it right here. That turned on. We'll click move right here, so we have we can see our my brain, manipulator tool. Now what we're going to do is press G and then Z. Shrink our proportional editing tool by rolling our mouse. I'm going to left click to lock that in. I'm going to click on the nothingness to deselect. I'm going to go back to solid view right here, actually. Click here, go to object mode. Okay, let's go back to sculpting mode. I'm going to left click here. Yeah, I think it looks better like that. Okay. Okay, let's I'm gonna hold control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm gonna hold shift and middle mouse button to pan, hold control and middle mouse button to zoom in. We're on clay strips, that is good. Make sure we have dynamic topology turned on. And I'm gonna press F. So I'm just trying to make this crease right here less prominent. When I'm saying the crease, I'm talking about this crease around the eye here. Bottom part of the eye. Careful about that edge there. That sharp edge, you want to keep that sharp edge. Letting go and shift down, holding shift. Well, not exactly how I said it. This right here, let's grab this. I'm going to press F. Let's pull that out there. Now we'll press F, hold shift to smooth this out. Pull it out more. Press F to shrink the brush. Holding shift to smooth that out. F to shrink the brush. Smoothing that out there. Got clay strips. Press F. Roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. Just putting in some clay right here. Pressing shift. Smooth that out. Okay. And this next part is pretty cool. I actually learned this from Zacharias Reinhardt. If you don't know who he is, he's a Blender teacher that does amazing tutorials. He actually has helped me out a lot as far as sculpting. And this thing here I learned from him as far as sculpting. And a lot of the sharp lines and things like this next thing takes care of that. So you want to make sure you have your mesh selected. You're going to click Add Modifier. You're going to select the Smooth modifier. See where this factor says 0.500. You're going to click here. You're going to change that to 1. Press Enter. For this repeat, I have this set at 1. I'm going to change this to 25. And basically you can see what that did is that smoothed out just a lot of the different roughnesses, rough pieces. That modifier just smoothed that right out. Good stuff. Pull the middle mouse button and zoom in back. Okay, I'm going to apply this modifier. I'm going to go click on our mesh, go back to our sculpting layout. Roll the mouse wheel to zoom in, and I just want to go to the clay strips. Holding shift. Smooth that out, some there. Okay, we're going to go back to layout. I want to put some eyelashes here. So to move the 3D cursor, now when we right click, we get this context menu, which I think it makes sense. It seems like it always should have been like this. To move the 3D cursor, we're going to hold shift and then right click, and that moves our 3D cursor. Hold shift and right click again. I'm going to hold shift, press A. That brings up our add to menu. I'm then going to select plane. Here's our plane here. I'm going to go to our upper left click there, select edit mode. I'm then going to hold Alt. While holding Alt, press M. This brings up our merge menu. I'm going to select at center. The reason why I'm doing this is I want to have a mesh stick right to here so I can make eyelashes. So I'm going to make sure I'm on vertex select, which is right there. I'm going to press A. proportional editing tools on. I'm going to turn that off. Okay, and when I did that merge, the reason why I did that, see that one vertex? That's what I wanted. Now it's away from our eyelid right here. So what I'm doing now is I'm rotating my brush, I'm rotating my view so that even though this vertex is away from this eyelid, I'm about to activate snapping. And when I activate snapping, this that represents our eyelash. Matter of fact, let's double click here and name this eyelash. We'll snap right to here. So I'm going to go to object mode. I'm going to go to snapping here, right? I'm going to go to face. And then I'm going to click on this project individual elements. From doing that, now when I go back to one other thing, you need to click right on this magnet looking thing. Now you can see it's highlighted. So now I'm going to go back to edit mode. I'm going to press A, and then when I press G, that one vertex is snapped right to here. So I'm going to, oh, there it goes. There it is there. I'm not sure how to make just this be the X-ray in Blender 2.8. I'm going to go to Vertex Select. It's hard to see right here. This, I have a edge selected. I know I have it selected though. You probably can't see it. If I click, I can click here and you can see it there. I'm not sure how to get this just to X-ray. So if somebody knows that, please leave that in the comment section. Because when I press X-ray now, basically everything is X-ray. So anyway, because we know it's here, we can hold Control and then right-click. Is that right? That's hard to see if that's right. I think it's right. Used to be around here. You would select X-ray. Oh, wireframe. Okay, looks like I found it. Okay, wait a minute. That's wireframe. Let's try object mode clicking here. That's wireframe. Maybe that'll help somewhat. That does help somewhat. So click here. A second. Wireframe. Display is textured. Somewhat, but okay, let me not get caught up into this. All right, so we need to, it's a small thing. We'll go to edit mode. We need to click, be on edge select, click right here. So I'm going to right click, right click, right click, right click, right click, as well as right click. I'm sorry that's difficult to see, but basically I have an edge selected. When I right click, the edge will jump to where my mouse is at. So now that we have this placed, what we can do is go to object mode. We'll go to our wrench, which is our modifier panel. We'll go to, well, first, you know what, let's hold control 2, which puts a solidify surface 2 on here. Then we're going to click and we're going to put on a solidify modifier. I pull to the right. Let's go to the left. I'm going to hold shift for fine movement. So now we have our eyelash right there. Okay. Okay, we want our eyelash on the other side as well. So that's fairly easy to do because we have our empty still. So with this selected on, remember there was an empty we put on in the beginning. That's how we set up a bunch of other things. So we're just going to click here. We're going to go to mirror modifier, and then we're going to look to where we see mirror object. We're going to left click on the square, and then we're going to select empty. And now we have our eyelash right on the other side as well. And while we're working on this, let's go to our materials. Let's click new. Base color will make this. It doesn't. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, so let's click on here. Let's go to back to our wrench and let's apply these. And then what we can do is go to sculpting, hold control on the middle mouse button to zoom. I'm going to go to the snake hook brush, press F, pull that out some. Pull that way there. Okay, we're going to go back to our layout mode. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. What we're going to do is we're going to hold shift and then right click right here. We're going to do a similar thing. We're going to hold shift. Let me turn this off first. So I clicked here to turn that snapping off. I'm going to hold shift, press A. That brings up our add to menu. I'm going to select plane. I'm then going to go to our upper left, go down to edit mode. I'm going to hold Alt while holding Alt, press M. This brings up our merge menu. I'm going to select at center. I'm going to go to vertex select. I'm going to press A to select that one vertex. I'm pushing that one vertex out so you can see it there. I'm rotating the camera just to get the viewing angle to line the vertex up. And now when I click on this, I'm going to go back to object mode. I'm going to click on this magnet. Now I'm going to go back to edit mode. I'm going to press A and then G, and that should snap right to our mesh underneath now. So now I'm going to hold control. We're just drawing out in eyebrow. So now I'm going to press A. I'm going to press E. Move that up to make the eyebrow have thickness. I'm going to click on nothingness. I'm then going to left click near the upper left and then select object mode. Okay, we're going to do similar to what we did before. We have this selected. There's the plane. Let's name this eyebrow. And then we're going to go to add modifier. Yeah, we'll just hold Control 2, which puts on a subdivision surface modifier. And then now we're going to add another modifier, which is a Solidify modifier. We're going to pull it to the left, give it a little thickness. If you want fine control, you can hold Shift. Once we have that, we're going to click here, click New, base color, make it like a gray color for now. Let's click back on our wrench, which is our modifier panel. Let's add a modifier, a mirror modifier. We're going to go down to where we see mirror object. We're going to click on the square. We're then going to select empty. Now we have the eyebrow on the other side as well. Okay, I'm going to apply these modifiers. I'm going to click on our main mesh. I'm going to go back to what looks like a square. I'm going to unclick this wireframe mode. And so we have a little bit more character. We're going to click on our eyeball. We're going to go to our modifier panel. We're going to hold Control, press 2. And that put a subdivision surface modifier on the eye. We're going to click Apply. We're then going to, let's go to our mirror modifier, which is right here. I'm going to, this little computer screen, I'm going to take that away for now. I'm then going to left click on Sculpting. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom up on the eye. Okay, I'm going to go to the blob brush. And it's actually not a bad size for the eyeball. So I have my brush right at the size of the eyeball that I want it to be. Okay, somewhat smaller. I'm going to put where I want the eyeball to go. I'm going to make sure I have dynamic topology turned on. And then now I'm going to hold Control, and I am just making a circle, a depression, to basically give the character an eyeball. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm going to go back to layout mode. And I'm going to turn the mirror modifier back on. Sorry, my brain, I'm just thinking as that just lets us have a little bit more character to the face, just having that quick thing of detail for the eyes there. Okay, let's make some hair. So we want to put the 3D cursor right back to the center of our scene. I'm going to press the space button. And see, we have this snap cursor to world origin. I'm going to left click that. You can, if you don't see this, you can, because I think I see this because I search for it. Again, I'm still learning Blender 2.8 myself. You can search for snap cursor to world origin. I'm going to left click that, put the 3D cursor right back to the center. With that done, and we're in object mode, I'm going to hold Shift, press A. This brings us to our Add To menu. I'm then going to go to UV Sphere. Here's our UV sphere. I'm going to hold Control and then press 2 to put a subdivision surface 2 on this UV sphere. I'm going to apply that. I'm then going to right click and select smooth shading. By the way that Blender 2.8 shows particle here is amazing, and Eevee, the fact that it renders it so fast is amazing. We're not doing particle hair right now. Before, I didn't really want to work with particle hair because it took so long to render. But with Eevee, it's very quick. However, for now, we're going to do polygon hair. So we have this sphere. We're going to press S to scale this up. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. Then I'm going to take the held the middle mouse button, rotate. I'm going to push back. Oops. I forgot to turn off snapping, so you wouldn't be able to push back. Now we can push back. And that's what we want. We want our, mainly just our nose to be sticking out. I'm going to press S to scale to make this bigger. Oh. I want this to be right in the center, so I went off center. So what I can do is I can press Shift S with this selected, and I can select selection to cursor keep offset. Now it's right back. So we'll push this down. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I was using manipulate. I'm going to press G and then Y and just bring this back. And I just wanted the nose to be out some like that. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go to Sculpting. I'm going to press F to make my brush bigger. I'm going to go to the grab brush. I'm going to hold Control and middle mouse button to zoom back. And I'm just going to push in here for the face so we can see our face. I'm going to press F, make this bigger. I'm going to pull down here. There we go. That pulled down in the back like that. Oh, make this. So we're just pushing, we're pushing this in so we can see our neck. I'm gonna hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in, and I'm gonna grab here. Go to the snake hook brush. Oh, I'm going to turn on dynamic topology. There we go, that's better. So we're just pushing this back to get, to make it look, like the hair is going behind the ears. Then for the other hair part of the hair, you want to make it look like gravity is falling. The hair, you can hold smooth. This here. Pull this back. We'll go to our inflate brush and we'll inflate that, puff that up some. Go to my grab brush and actually I'm going to go to the crease tool. Just crease this like that. I'll hold Shift to smooth this here. And what I'm going to do now is make that not so far. I'm going to go to this symmetry lock here. Remember we had worked with this before. I'm going to turn this off. The reason why I'm turning that off is this will allow me to pull the hair over to the side. Like that. And change the hair here. Push this in here like that. Hold Shift and middle mouse button to pan. Go back to the inflate brush. Inflate there like that. Back to the grab brush. back to the inflate brush. Inflate that up some like that. Back to the grab brush. You're kind of just with here, you're kind of, you know, pulling, inflating. Now we're going to go to our crease brush. Press F to shrink the crease brush down. Make sure you have dynamic topology turned on. You're going to come from the part. You're basically trying to get a flow to the hair with the crease brush. Just holding the middle mouse button to rotate. I mentioned Steve James before. He has a tutorial for ZBrush. He's showing how to make hair. And this is pretty much where I got the technique from, or where I got the technique from. It's very nice because it's fairly quick. Depending on how much time you take, gives you good results. Control the middle mouse button to rotate the view. So yeah, I'm just, you know, the crease brush again and again. Actually smooth this out. Actually, I'll go to the simplify brush to add some geometry in. Okay, so we'll just press F. And I'm holding shift to smooth. Need to turn, make sure your there we go. Make sure dynamic topology is on. Go back to our crease brush. I'm controlling the middle mouse button to zoom back. Actually pretty fun. We have these straight lines. We can go to our grab brush and press F to scale. We can push the hair to the side so it doesn't look control the middle mouse button so straight. we'll go to our flatten brush now. Actually, before the flatten brush, go back to the crease and like right here, let's put an angle there. So I'm holding control. Holding control here as well. Still holding control. Not letting control. I'm not holding control now. Just trying to make some of those creases thicker. Not holding control. Holding control. Sharpening up some of the edges. Now we're going to go to the flatten brush and take away, as Steve James would say, some of the poofiness. So we're going where we see the hair poofing out maybe more than you would want to. You just take the flatten brush along there. So hold the middle mouse button to rotate. Shrinking my brush so I can go along without hitting the edges. Pressing F to make the brush grow. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to hold control, the middle mouse button to zoom in. Flatten brush right here. It's right here. I'm going to go back to the crease brush right here. I'm going to hold control for right here. Put an edge on the hair right there. I'm not holding control, so I can crease in right here. Deeper crease right there. Make a layout and take a look. Okay. I go back to sculpting and I'm going to go to the grab brush. Hold shift and middle mouse button to pan, press F. Okay. Okay, what we're going to do now is click back on our head mesh. We're going to go back to sculpting. We're going to go to where we see symmetry lock. We're going to go to mirror. We're going to check X again. There's a little work that needs to be done on the eye here. So I'm going to hold control, while holding control, push my mouse forward. I'm going to go to the clay strips brush. I'm going to press F to shrink the size of my brush. Hold control, yep, too much. F to shrink the size. Put in clay strips right here. And holding shift now to smooth this out. Holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Holding control the middle mouse button to zoom in. See that right there? That it's easier to see it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here and go to scope mode here. Make sure okay, we are selected on that, so we'll clue scope mode here. I'm just filling in this dent right here, and I'm holding shift to smooth it out now. Holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Nope, dynamic topology is turned off. There we go. I control the middle mouse button to zoom back. Okay, I like how this turned out. Okay guys, that's it for the tutorial. I am glad to be back making Blender tutorials again. People had asked me before if I was going to do a Patreon. I do have a Patreon now that is just about set up and ready to go. So if you like how I make tutorials and you would like to support me on Patreon, very cool. I would really appreciate that. If you don't want to do that and want to just watch the videos, I appreciate that as well. Okay guys, for those of you who like the videos on this channel and reshare them, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel, you would like to see more, please subscribe and thank you for viewing.